Part 1. The Dragon's Request. Isabella wiped sweat from her brow as she examined the intricate silver bracelet taking shape on her anvil. The metal seemed to pulse with its own inner warmth, responding to her hammer strikes in ways that defied everything she understood about conventional metalworking. Her father's journal lay open beside the forge, filled with cryptic notes about dragon-touched silver and techniques that bordered on impossible. The sound of expensive boots on gravel drew her attention to the workshop entrance. A tall man stood silhouetted against the afternoon light, his presence commanding attention without effort. Dark hair caught with subtle silver threads, and when he stepped closer, his eyes revealed an unusual blue-green that seemed to shift colour in the forge light. "Isabella Ashworth!" His voice carried formal precision that suggested careful education. "Just Isabella," she replied, setting down her hammer and studying this unexpected visitor. "The forge isn't open for walk-in customers." "I'm not here as a typical customer." He approached her workstation with evident appreciation for the craftsmanship displayed around the workshop. "My name is Kieran. I believe your father once worked with materials that required specialized knowledge." Isabella's wariness sharpened immediately. Few people knew about her father's unusual projects, and fewer still would speak of them so directly. "My father died 2 years ago. His work died with him." "I think you underestimate your inheritance." Kieran's gaze moved to the silver piece she'd been shaping, and his expression shifted to something approaching wonder. "That's dragon-touched adamantine you're working. There are perhaps 3 people in the world who could shape it without proper preparation, and your father was one of them." "Dragon-touched?" Isabella forced skepticism into her voice, though her father's journal used that exact terminology. Kieran reached into his coat and withdrew a small ingot of metal unlike anything she'd ever seen. It seemed to contain trapped starlight, shifting between silver and gold with its own internal luminescence. "I can provide materials your father could only dream of accessing. In exchange, I need a single commissioned piece created using techniques he began to develop." Isabella found herself drawn to the impossible metal despite every rational instinct warning her against involvement with this mysterious stranger. "What kind of piece?" "A dragon's collar," Kieran said quietly. "Something capable of channeling and focusing magical energy while remaining beautiful enough to honor the creature wearing it." The honesty in his voice surprised her, as did his careful phrasing that suggested genuine respect for dragons rather than the fear most people expressed. Isabella's father had always spoken of dragons with reverence, describing them as the greatest craftsmen of the ancient world. "I don't work with commissions from people who won't explain their purposes," she said finally. "Then I'll return when you're ready to hear explanations you might not believe." Kieran placed the luminescent metal on her workbench. "Consider this a demonstration of good faith. Work with it as you would any precious metal, but let your instincts guide the process rather than conventional technique." "Wait!" Isabella called as he turned toward the door. "How do I contact you when I decide?" "You won't need to contact me," Kieran replied with a slight smile that suggested knowledge beyond ordinary understanding. "I'll know when you're ready." After his departure, Isabella found herself staring at the impossible metal for over an hour, watching light move within its structure like captured flame. Her father's journal contained detailed sketches of similar materials, accompanied by notes about emotional resonance and sympathetic harmonics that she'd never understood. When she finally touched the metal with her bare fingers, warmth spread up her arms like gentle fire, and she understood with sudden clarity that her father's legacy involved far more than exceptional metalworking skills. Part 2. Shared Fire. 3 days later, Isabella had filled 6 pages of her sketchbook with designs for the dragon collar, each iteration more ambitious than the last. The luminescent metal responded to her touch in ways that challenged everything she understood about materials science, growing warmer when she felt confident and dimming when doubt crept into her mind. Kieran returned at sunset, appearing in her doorway as silently as before. This time, however, Isabella was prepared for his arrival, having sensed a strange anticipation building throughout the afternoon. Your instincts were correct, she said without preamble, gesturing toward her latest sketches. This material responds to emotion and intention, not just heat and pressure. Show me what you've discovered, Kieran requested, settling onto the stool across from her workbench with evident interest. Isabella positioned the metal on her anvil and began working with techniques her father's journal described, but she'd never attempted. Instead of forcing the metal into submission through repetitive hammering, she allowed her intentions to flow through her hands, shaping the material through focused will as much as physical manipulation. The transformation was remarkable. The metal seemed to dance under her guidance, taking on complex curves and delicate filigree that should have required hours of painstaking detail work. As she worked, Kieran provided quiet guidance, suggesting adjustments to her emotional focus and teaching her to read the metal's responsiveness. Your father learned these techniques through careful observation, Kieran explained as Isabella created a practice piece of unprecedented beauty. But you're developing intuitive understanding that takes most artisans decades to achieve. Most artisans? Isabella paused in her work to study his face. You speak as though you've taught this before. I've observed many craftsmen throughout my travels, Kieran replied carefully. Your approach combines technical precision with emotional authenticity in ways I've rarely witnessed. Their collaboration continued as darkness fell outside, with Kieran sharing knowledge that seemed impossibly deep, while Isabella demonstrated innovations that surprised even her mysterious teacher. When he suggested heating the metal with focused intention rather than conventional fire, she discovered she could raise its temperature through concentrated will. This is impossible, according to everything I've studied, Isabella said, watching the metal glow with heat she'd generated through mental focus alone. Impossible, according to human metalworking, Kieran corrected gently. But dragons understood that the finest craftsmanship emerges from harmony between maker, material, and purpose. You talk about dragons as though you've met them. Kieran's expression grew distant, touched with ancient sadness. In a manner of speaking, I have. They were remarkable craftsmen, capable of creating beauty that lasted millennia. But they're gone now, hunted to extinction by those who feared their power. Isabella sensed deeper truth in his words than simple historical knowledge. But she didn't press for explanations he wasn't ready to provide. Instead, she focused on the growing warmth between them as they worked side by side, sharing techniques and discoveries that felt like intimate secrets. Kieran, she said as he prepared to leave near midnight, this collar I'm making, it's for something specific, isn't it? Not just theoretical craftsmanship. Yes, he admitted quietly. It's for someone who has waited centuries to wear something beautiful again instead of hiding from a world that would destroy them for existing. The pain in his voice made Isabella's chest tighten with unexpected empathy. Will you tell me about them? When the collar is finished, Kieran promised, and when you're ready to understand that some stories challenge everything most people believe about the world. Part 3. Dangerous Discoveries. 2 weeks into their collaboration, Isabella began noticing subtle changes around the forge that set her nerves on edge. Tools appeared in different positions than she'd left them, and several times she caught glimpses of figures watching the workshop from the coastal cliffs. When she mentioned these observations to Kieran, his expression grew immediately serious. Show me exactly where you've seen these watchers, he said, abandoning the delicate wirework they'd been perfecting. Isabella led him to the large windows overlooking the cliff path, pointing toward the rocky outcropping where she'd spotted movement. There, behind those boulders. And yesterday I found footprints near the tide pools that disappeared into the caves. Kieran's entire demeanor shifted, revealing predatory alertness beneath his civilized exterior. Isabella, I need you to understand that the work we're doing together has attracted attention from people who would do anything to obtain dragon-touched materials. What kind of people? Hunters who have spent centuries waiting for signs that dragons might still exist. Kieran's voice carried grim knowledge. Your father understood these risks, which is why he worked in such secrecy. Isabella felt cold dread settling in her stomach. Are you saying I've put myself in danger by working with these materials? We've put ourselves in danger, Kieran corrected. And I need to tell you something that will sound impossible, but which you must believe if we're going to protect ourselves. Before Isabella could respond, the workshop windows exploded inward as dark figures burst through the glass. 3 people in hooded cloaks moved with inhuman speed, their eyes glowing with unnatural light as they advanced towards the workbench where dragon-touched metals lay scattered. "The materials are here," one attacker hissed in a voice like grinding stone. "And the dragon hides among us, pretending humanity." Kieran stepped protectively in front of Isabella, and his transformation began immediately. His human facade dissolved as his true nature emerged, ancient, powerful, and magnificently terrible. Scales replaced skin, wings erupted from his shoulders, and his size increased until he filled half the workshop as a massive black dragon with blue-green eyes that burned with protective fury. "Stay behind me!" Kieran commanded in a voice that shook the building's foundations. Isabella watched in stunned amazement as dragon fire met the attacker's magic, turning her workshop into a battlefield of supernatural forces. Fear warred with fascination as she realized that every instinct she'd developed about Kieran's otherworldly knowledge had been absolutely correct. The battle ended quickly, with the hunters retreating rather than facing a fully transformed dragon in close quarters. But the damage to both workshop and Isabella's understanding of reality was considerable. "You're actually a dragon," she said when Kieran resumed human form, his clothing somehow intact despite the transformation. "I'm the last dragon," Kieran replied quietly, or I believed I was, until our work together began awakening responses from others I thought were gone forever. Isabella sank onto her work stool, processing the revelation while studying this man she'd grown to trust completely. "The collar isn't for someone else. It's for you." "Yes. A symbol that I no longer have to hide what I am. If I can find others of my kind who've survived by remaining dormant." Kieran approached carefully, as though expecting her to flee. "Isabella, I know this changes everything between us." "It explains everything between us," she corrected, surprising herself with her calm acceptance. "The way metals respond to you, the knowledge you possess, the sadness when you speak of dragon history. I've been falling for someone I didn't fully understand, but whose nature I somehow recognized." Kieran's expression filled with wonder and hope. "You're not afraid?" "I'm terrified," Isabella admitted honestly. "But not of you. Of the people who want to hurt you, and of losing something precious before I fully understand what it means." "Then you'll help me finish what we've started, even knowing the risks?" Isabella looked around her damaged workshop, then at the dragon-touched metals that still glowed with inner fire despite the chaos. "We'll need better defenses. And I want to understand everything about what we're really doing. Everything," Kieran promised, "starting with why your father chose to prepare you for this inheritance." Part 4. Ancient Magic Awakening. Over the following month, Isabella's forge became a sanctuary where ancient dragon magic merged with human innovation. Kieran taught her to channel her inherited abilities through meditation and emotional focus, while she showed him metalworking techniques that had evolved far beyond what dragons had achieved in their prime. Their collaboration produced artifacts of unprecedented beauty and power. The dragon collar grew from simple design into a masterpiece that could amplify magical energy while appearing as elegant jewelry to untrained eyes. But more importantly, their joint magical work had begun awakening dormant dragons across the Pacific Northwest. 3 more responses last night, Kieran reported, consulting the scrying crystal they'd created to monitor magical awakening signals. 1 from the Cascade Mountains, 2 from coastal caves in Northern California. Isabella felt excitement and apprehension in equal measure. "Are they friendly responses?" "Cautious," Kieran replied carefully. "Dragons who've survived this long have learned to be suspicious of any magical disturbance. They're investigating but not approaching directly." Their first face-to-face contact came during a storm that battered the coast with unusual intensity. Isabella was working late on a pair of bracers designed to help newly awakened dragons control their transformation when massive wings blocked the workshop windows. The dragon that landed outside was smaller than Kieran but radiated ancient power. Silver scales caught lightning flashes as she shifted to human form. A woman who appeared middle-aged but carried herself with regal bearing that suggested centuries of experience. "So," the newcomer said as Kieran invited her inside, "this is the human whose magical signature has been calling to sleeping dragons across the continent." "Isabella, meet Serafina," Kieran said with evident relief. "We grew up together before the great hunts scattered our kind." Serafina studied Isabella with intelligent golden eyes, taking particular interest in the dragon-touched artifacts displayed around the workshop. "You work with dragon magic as though born to it. Most humans would be consumed by direct contact with such power." "My father spent years preparing me," Isabella explained, offering the silver dragon a chair near the forge. "Though I don't think he fully understood what he was preparing me for." "He understood perfectly," Serafina replied with surprising gentleness. "Your bloodline carries traces of ancient dragon magic, diluted through generations but never entirely lost. That's why you can shape our metals and why our awakening calls respond to your magical signature." The revelation transformed Isabella's understanding of her own identity. "I'm part dragon." "Distantly," Kieran confirmed. "Enough to bridge the gap between our species, but not enough to transform or possess extended lifespan. You're uniquely qualified to help my kind adapt to the modern world." Their conversation was interrupted by Serafina's sharp warning about approaching magical signatures. "Dragon hunters," she hissed, moving toward the windows. "The same ones who attacked before, but in greater numbers." This time, Isabella didn't remain a passive observer. Using techniques Kieran had taught her, she channeled magical energy through the workshop's metal framework, creating protective barriers that deflected the hunter's initial assault. The dragon collar around Kieran's neck amplified his fire magic, while bracers on Isabella's arms allowed her to direct dragon magic with unprecedented precision. Their victory came through teamwork that showcased the unique advantages of human-dragon collaboration. Isabella's innovative tactics combined with centuries of dragon experience to overcome enemies who'd expected to find isolated, vulnerable targets. "This is why your father trained you," Serafina observed as they examined the defeated hunters' abandoned equipment. "Not just to help individual dragons, but to forge alliances that make our species stronger together than apart." Isabella looked between Kieran and Serafina, understanding for the first time the full scope of her inheritance. "How many more dragons are waiting to wake up?" "Dozens," Kieran replied, his expression mixing hope with determination. "And every one of them will need help learning to live in your modern world." "Then we'd better expand the workshop," Isabella said, surprising herself with her calm acceptance of responsibilities that would reshape her entire life. "And I'd better learn everything you can teach me about dragon culture and history." "Are you certain?" Kieran asked quietly. "This path will change everything about your life, including the relationship growing between us." Isabella reached for his hand, feeling the familiar warmth of dragon magic flowing between them. "I'm certain about you. Everything else we'll figure out together." Part 5. Forging the Future. 2 months later, Isabella's forge had become the secret heart of a dragon renaissance. 7 awakened dragons had made contact, each seeking help adapting ancient abilities to modern realities. The workshop expanded into the coastal caves Kieran had shown her, creating a hidden sanctuary where dragons could practice transformation and magical techniques without fear of discovery. Isabella found herself becoming translator between species, helping dragons understand human technology, while teaching humans like Serafina's archaeologist friend to work safely with magical artifacts. Her relationship with Kieran had evolved from collaboration to deep partnership, with their combined magical abilities creating innovations neither species had achieved alone. "The resonance crystals are perfect," Kieran reported, examining the latest batch of communication devices Isabella had crafted. Dragons across 3 states can coordinate safely without revealing their locations to hunters. Good, Isabella replied, putting finishing touches on a transformation collar for Lysander, a young dragon who'd awakened in the urban environment of Seattle. Because our next challenge is going to be helping him blend into city life without anyone noticing his tendency to breathe smoke when nervous. Their comfortable partnership was tested when a delegation of dragon hunters arrived in Sanctuary Bay, not for attack, but for negotiation. The leader, a woman whose family had spent generations hunting dragons, requested a meeting to discuss coexistence rather than continued warfare. Times have changed, Elena Blackthorne explained as she sat across from Isabella and Kieran in the Forge's main workshop. My organization has realized that dragons living peacefully in human form pose no threat to anyone. We're prepared to offer protection in exchange for your help identifying rogue magic users who do threaten public safety. Isabella felt the weight of speaking for an entire species, but Kieran's steady presence gave her confidence to negotiate terms that would benefit both communities. We'll consider cooperation, but only if your people stop treating dragons like monsters to be hunted. Agreed, Elena replied. In fact, we'd like to commission some of your protective artifacts for our agents. Your reputation for creating magical items that don't corrupt their users has reached some very important people. The negotiations lasted 3 days, resulting in an unprecedented agreement that would allow dragons to live openly while contributing their unique abilities to solve supernatural problems threatening both species. Isabella's forge would serve as neutral ground where dragons and humans could work together rather than in opposition. You realize what you've accomplished? Serafina asked as they watched Elena's delegation depart peacefully. You've created the foundation for the first dragon-human alliance in over 500 years. We've created it, Isabella corrected, looking at Kieran with deep affection. I never could have done this alone. Neither could I, Kieran replied, drawing her close as they stood overlooking the ocean where more dragons would soon feel safe enough to emerge from hiding. Isabella, these past months have given me something I never expected to find again. What's that? Hope for the future. Not just survival, but the possibility of building something beautiful with someone I love completely. Isabella felt her heart skip at his first direct declaration of love. I love you too. Both the man who taught me about dragon magic and the dragon who trusted me with his people's future. Then you'll stay? Even though loving me means accepting a life filled with magical complications and supernatural responsibilities? Especially because of that, Isabella replied, leaning up to kiss him as dragon fire sparkled harmlessly around them. I've found my calling and I've found you. Everything else is just adventure. 6 months after Kieran first entered her forge, Isabella stood in the expanded workshop surrounded by artifacts that represented a new era of cooperation between species. The dragon collar she'd originally crafted for him had become the first of many magical items that allowed dragons to live authentically while remaining safe in the human world. Ready for the grand opening? Kieran asked, gesturing toward the official sign they'd commissioned for the workshop. Ember and Scale Forge, where ancient craft meets modern innovation. Ready, Isabella confirmed, watching through the windows as their first official customers, both human and dragon, approached the workshop that had become a bridge between worlds. Their love had forged more than just magical artifacts. It had created the foundation for a future where both species could thrive together, with Isabella and Kieran leading by example that the strongest magic of all was the kind that brought different hearts together in common purpose. As the workshop doors opened to welcome a new age of dragon-human cooperation, Isabella realized that inheriting her father's magical legacy had given her everything she'd never known she wanted. Meaningful work, true love, and the chance to help build a world where ancient magic and modern innovation could create something more beautiful than either could achieve alone.